Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Christine Smallwood, and sorry it's taking me a bit of time to get around at the moment, but I'm thrilled to be here. Yes, I'm a food and travel writer and a food tourism consultant. I specialize in Italy. I've written 2 books, one on Umbria, the region in the centre next to Tuscany, one on Puglia, which comprises the heel, makes up the heel, so it's the very southern bit of Italy, and they told the stories of the people behind the food. I'm currently researching the 3rd in the series on Lombardia, which is the region in the north, so Milan, the Valtellina, Lakes, Como, Garda, etc., or George Clooney country, as it's increasingly known. And I've worked on various food festivals and strategic initiatives in Italy. Earlier this year, I advised Carmarthenshire on their Taste Local project, which Simon Wright, who's here and will be talking later, was involved in. And I was instrumental in the partnership that the Abergavenny Food Festival had with Divingusto, the food festival in southern Italy. Over a couple of years, there was an exchange between the Welsh and the Italian producers going from Wales to Italy and vice versa. And in case you're wondering, yes, the Pugliese absolutely loved the Welsh produce and the Welsh producers, but then we did have some pretty interesting characters with us. So I've been asked to talk, sorry, before I go on, this is a photo of the Divingusto Festival in Ceglia Massapica, where Wales went. There, on the right is Martin Orbach with his Welsh flag, preparing to talk at a press conference when it started to rain, which it never ever does in Puglia in August, so I don't know who was more surprised, us or the locals. I've been asked today to talk about some international experiences that relate to today's question, what makes a successful food destination? There are probably as many answers to that question as there are food destinations, which in many ways makes it easy if you're trying to establish one. Here we have the Piazza Plebiscito in Ceglia with all the Welsh people getting on stage to do their cooking dems. Here we have some people who you may well know from the Abergavenny Festival. Kate Jenkins at the top with her brownies, Carwyn Adams with his cheese. I think, Ruth, who's the guy down at the bottom? Is that James, somebody from Treely Farm? With a huge queue outside the stand of all of the Italians who sometimes aren't quite as generous to other people's gastronomy, really keen to come to terms with what the Welsh were serving. My first ever awareness of a food destination was a couple of decades ago in Sonoma. I'd spent a fair bit of time in France. Sorry, I've just noticed, Simon, it's a photo of you looking particularly splendid. I'd lived in France. I was familiar with the importance of food traditions, markets, and celebrations that bring people together over food. But Sonoma was the first place I ever went to where I was really struck by how omnipresent the sort of message about its food and wine was. I was recently told by an American that it's gone seriously downhill, but I have to say I have very fond, albeit slightly blurry, memories of that visit. It's clear that the very definition of a food destination can send people into quite heated shouting matches. We have a very short amount of time, so let's keep it simple. Stick to a general definition of perhaps what appeals to the UK market as far as a food destination is concerned. So let's broadly consider one as somewhere, be it a town, a county, maybe even a coastline, but a defined place which has a positive reputation for food or drink, be it quality restaurants, a specific product, that's worth travelling out of your way to experience in the very place itself. Which leads us neatly to Italy, because you'd struggle to find people who don't consider Italy in general as a food destination. And that's before we get into individual regional preferences. Italian food is and has been hugely popular in this country for quite a long time. I was talking at a conference in Puglia a couple of weeks ago with a good friend of mine, Jane Baxter, who's here doing a cooking dem in Puglia back in 2010. We were at a food conference, and she's well known here in Abergavenny. She's done lots of events. I've done a few with her. She made her name, well, not made her name, but she set up the field kitchen at Riverford, put their restaurant on the map. And she is ex-River Cafe, so she's very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic about Italian food. The two of us, as Brits, were asked by the discussion panel moderator what we, as Brits, thought about Italian food and specifically Pugliese food. And it really brought home to us how, in Great Britain, we've really got the idea, and I know I do a lot of Italian food, but I think everybody in this country now knows that Italian food isn't Italian food. It's a collection of different regional cuisines. Pizza may be served everywhere, but it belongs to Naples. Pesto is from Genoa in Liguria, and I think we all know where Parma ham comes from. There are increasingly in this country restaurants that don't open as Italian restaurants. They open as a Pugliese restaurant. There's Ostuni, a recent opening in London. Vasco Impiero in Soho serves Umbrian food. And that message of regionality is now so well understood by us that in effect it amounts to sort of regional food destination marketing. And that's apparent to any visitor to Italy and its various regions, provinces, towns, because you're quickly made aware that the people who live there will enthusiastically, passionately, sometimes obsessively, evangelize about their speciality or typical foods. If you go to Ceglie Massapica, where Abergavenny went to do their festival exchange, everybody will tell you that their biscotti celiesi are the best almond biscuits that you've ever eaten. They may well be. I don't know how many almond biscuits you've eaten. They're kind of like, they have jam in the center. They're kind of like fig rolls. But the biscuits do have a slow food presidio, which you may well know is it's a protection order that the Slow Food Organization puts on foods which are made by artisan producers in a traditional way. And I think that's key because Italians often campaign really tenaciously and fervently to get their specialty foods awards, be them Presidio, be them DOP, DOC, protected or certified certificates of origin. And of course, Italians tend to be all too keen to tell you about their gastronomic culture, how their town's been revered for its cheese, its pulses, its grains since antiquity. So do you have to have a centuries-old food culture to be a food destination? Far from it, not at all. I don't think so at all. Sorry, can I have a glass of water, Sarah? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. This is a great thing about having a broken foot, you get to delegate. Let's look at a recently established Italian food destination. On the map, you can see a place called Franciacorta in Lombardy. Has anybody ever been there or heard of it? Okay, clearly got a bit more work to do. It's less than a quarter of the size of Monmouthshire, and it borders Lago Iseo and Lakes Como and Garda. So it's in the province of Brescia, which to Italians means industry. That's what Brescia's known for. But back in the 1960s, the zone of Franciacorta consisted of numerous plots of land being used for general cultivation and prime to be industrialized. But a gentleman called Vittorio Moretti, who's a billionaire industrialist, realized it was a great place to grow grapes, which are needed for sparkling wine. And in this part of Italy, that's Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc, not Pinot Meunier. So in the 1970s, he started to do that. Now, he wasn't the first, but he did so with a vision. And he combined that vision with the right grapes to make really good quality fizz and serious investment. In a nutshell, there was a huge desire to turn this area into a food destination, and people made it happen. So a few decades further forward from this initial idea, there are now over 2,200 hectares, I think that's about 5,400 acres of vine cultivation, in a total area of about 20,000 hectares, and an ever-increasing number of acclaimed restaurants. Now, I had a fascinating chat last week with Francesca Moretti, his daughter. She's the current president of the Strada del Franciacorta, which is the 80-kilometer trail and promotional platform that goes around all the vineyards and interesting food parts of Franciacorta. This is a picture of her here. She's in her late 30s, and she's one of the three daughters of the Moretti dynasty. So she's in charge of this winemaking side of the business, which is the Bella Vista Winery, which if ever you want to go and do a wine tasting in a winery, try and get one there. It's quite extraordinary. And Contada Costaldi. She's intelligent, she has enough international exposure to know how to move things forward. And looking at what they've done in recent years to transform Franciacorta from just being known for excellent fizz to having a reputation for excellent food to go with it, I think can teach us some valuable lessons. So their stated mission was simple. They wanted to bring more people to Franciacorta, they wanted to make sure they had excellent food and wine, and they wanted them to leave talking about it and spreading the word, recommending the place to their friends. The movers and shakers in Franciacorta knew they had to apply the idea of excellence across all price ranges, so not just the Michelin-starred restaurants, and there are a lot of those in Lombardia, but in cheaper, but importantly, quality, sort of rustic trattoria. As a point of reference to indicate this, I had two of the most memorable meals I've ever had in my life a couple of weeks ago. One was in a 3-star Michelin restaurant where the pasta course alone was priced at €35, which I think would make most of us go ouch. And in the other one, this was the Michelin-starred restaurant with the chef serving us personally at our table, not the kind of thing I'm used to. And the other one had a tasting menu less than the cost of that one pasta course. Yes, there's me with my foot still broken. There was also the understanding in Franciacorta that the accommodation offers had to be varied. So there are indeed exceptionally swanky hotels. L'Albereta, which is owned by Francesca's sister, will set you back €900 a night. But there are some incredibly simple agriturismi, some great camping sites, and we stayed in a superb quality bed and breakfast that was really reasonably priced and was perfect for us. One point that Francesca and I discussed at length was the whole kind of rhythm of a year, i.e. the organisation of events throughout a year, so there's not a high and a low season for food tourists. Because eating food, drinking wine isn't weather dependent. Festivals, art and cultural events, combined with gastronomy, can take place on even the greyest and most miserable days, and I'm sure we all know that actually it can cheer them up quite a bit. So in September, as you can see here, there is a festival of Franciacorta. They have art, they have music, they have what the Italians so charmingly call emozioni, which is a catch-all for all sorts of things. Something that Francesca's done, and that she's rightly particularly proud of, is that she's brought together all of the potentially conflicting and competing syndicates and associations that cover the hotels, the travel agencies, the restaurants, the vineyards, so on and so forth, to form one group that works together. I mean, as she put it, it's daft that we don't combine funds, that we work against each other. It makes much more sense that we combine our efforts, even if we don't always agree 100%. We get so much more done if we work together. I've never had to negotiate with her, but I'm getting the impression that she is formidably persuasive. So let's take a specific example of some practical teamwork on the wine and food front. I'm sure some of you have visited vineyards when you've travelled, right? Yes, can see lots of people nodding. And you've probably enjoyed a wine tasting or two, maybe even been tempted to ship some wine home, have a bit of nostalgic consumption later on in the year. But you may have thought, actually, I don't want a whole case from this vineyard, I just want a couple of bottles. Oh, it just works out to be too expensive, we'll leave it. The Franciacorta Consortium is in the throes of setting up an online shop where, whether you're in Franciacorta or not, you can buy any number of bottles of wines from any number of vineyards, combine them all together, ship them in one go, you get the economies of scale, the vineyards get the benefit of making a sale, everybody's happy. Despite how competitive a producer may be towards its rivals, teamwork just benefits everybody and is necessary when you're looking at the bigger picture. Somewhere nearer to home, where I think teamwork has helped immeasurably, is Bermondsey in South London. Bermondsey Street between London and Tower Bridges. It's a narrow street that's been completely transformed in recent years. My accountant and my graphic designer were both down there, so I used to go down there quite a lot. And there were a few places to grab an end-of-day drink and bite to eat, but nothing to really write home about. But then, two interesting chefs arrived in this up-and-coming area. One was Jose Pizarro with his tapas bar, all 55 square meters of it, Jose. and Sam Harris with the extraordinary Italian restaurant Zucca. Jose went on to open a restaurant, Pizarro. Sam has got another opening in the offing. And although, importantly, I think neither of them had the idea of a food destination in their mind, they did work together to basically just improve the appeal of the street, to raise its profile, and saw that as being beneficial to both of them. It's now undoubtedly a food destination, and I know both Sam and Jose pretty well. And for many years, whenever I read interviews with them, and either of them was asked, which is your favourite restaurant, they always named each other's, which was quite beneficial, I think. So essentially, just two individuals who happened to be on the same street and saw the benefit of there being a cluster of good food places being together, of critical mass and sort of positive contagion, and in a very softly supportive way, work together to raise the game. And I do think that working together cannot be overestimated. It's difficult to get people to travel out of their way for just one quality experience, one extraordinary crustacean, one delicious pie, one amazing vegetable. But they may well think twice about it if there's just one single place to try that, but they may be more enthusiastic about coming if there are more opportunities. The exception, of course, to that one attraction rule is if you're a world-renowned food experience. El Bulli, as we all know, is no longer, at least not as a restaurant, but Ferran Adria turned that part of Catalonia into a frantically sought-after destination during its existence. The Waterside Inn did the same with the small village of Bray in Berkshire, although these days people tend to talk more about the Fat Duck. And I don't think you can talk about restaurants creating food destinations without mentioning Franco and Antoruschio and the Walnut Tree Inn here in Abergavenny, although I'm well aware of the fact that it's no longer theirs. They really put Abergavenny on the map, and in so doing created an almost constant stream of visitors from elsewhere in the country to a Welsh town that was previously unknown to most. Did they set out to create a food destination? Unlikely. I haven't spoken to them about this, but I've had numerous chats with them over the years, and I'm pretty sure they'd say they just wanted to concentrate on serving excellent food and having their own very good restaurant. Whereas those behind the initial establishment of Franciacorta, as we've seen, had a broad zonal promotion in mind. As we know, they had serious funds at their disposal, but in my experience, that's quite unusual. They also had something which is important, doesn't cost a fortune, and that's a sense of place. I think with few exceptions, if somewhere is aiming to be a food destination, there does need to be an understanding of the characteristics that make the destination or that place special or unique, and those should be played to. I'm quite fortunate. I'm married to an architect, so over the years I've come to understand more about what makes a place stand out in ways that move beyond the food front, and exploiting those can help considerably. I'd like to touch briefly on a very different place, which for the countries surround it is considered to be a food destination, and a sexy must-visit one at that. The United Arab Emirates, sorry, we're still in Bermondsey Street, sorry about that. The United Arab Emirates boasts two world cities, the capital Abu Dhabi and the bling-tastic Dubai. Good friends of ours worked in Abu Dhabi for 11 years, and they were the only people they ever knew who ever went to eat at a hole-in-the-wall place serving Emirati food. Bear in mind that only 10% of people living in Abu Dhabi are Emirati. The rest are expats, hence the large number of UK chefs there. Gary Rhodes, Marco Pierre White are really big draws. And there are Lebanese, Syrian, Pakistani restaurants. Talking to a chef in Abu Dhabi recently, he reminded me that people go to Abu Dhabi to work and to earn money. They don't really go because they're interested in food. But there's a culture there of having and doing the biggest, the fastest, the first, of everything. So the Emiratis eat their food at home, but that's not the food they want to eat when they go out. The expat community isn't interested in Emirati food. It's not seen as being prestigious enough. So therefore, you end up with a food destination that people from Oman and other places go to just to eat in restaurants of big-name chefs from other parts in the world. They certainly don't go there to eat indigenous food. Now, interestingly, the Abu Dhabi chef called me because he's looking into the cultivation of King Edward potatoes in the desert, because there's a huge demand for baked potatoes in Abu Dhabi from the Brits. I know, who knew? You may be thinking, but this is not the sort of food destination on our agenda. But, well, I think that's understandable, but I think it makes you understand how Abu Dhabi clearly does have an understanding of its own sense of place, that it knows that's kind of what it has to do to make it work as a food destination, albeit a slightly unusual one. As a brief aside, they're also active in developing hydroponic cultivation, and they're aiming to be the first place where all fish eaten is sustainable. But aside from the UAE, there's another general aspect to food destination success that perhaps I've been implicit about, but I'd like to state clearly, and that's the need to involve the visitor. It's all very well arriving at a destination, but being given the chance to discover things is part of the attraction and buzz, and I think this is one of the reasons why food and wine trails work so well, because there's a sort of subliminal exploratory aspect to them. I don't know if any of you were here last year when Polly Robinson, who runs Food Safaris, spoke, and she's here today too. But Polly runs these amazing trips where people go to forage and make discoveries, and they're a huge success. And I think it's because people like to discover things, right? They don't like it all to necessarily be given to them on a plate, which is perhaps an inappropriate cliche for what we're talking about. But I do have to come back to the idea of teamwork, of getting everybody to work together, is what makes it possible in the end. I've been an enthusiastically vocal supporter of the Abergavenny Food Festival for many years, and aside from having a strong and committed team as part of the festival crew, one thing Abergavenny does incredibly successfully is to have food from elsewhere alongside the Welsh produce. It keeps things fresh, and I think it enables the Welsh gems to shine even more brightly. This year, the festival's welcoming La Boqueria, the Barcelona market, which is very exciting, and I'm sure the Welsh stallholders will get as much out of the visit as the Spanish will themselves. Now, the starting point for this conference was the Miller Questionnaire, which was a very useful launch pad. And I too feel strongly that when you're establishing, improving, or even just maintaining a food destination, you do need to talk to the people you want to attract. And I know that sounds obvious, but I'm constantly amazed by how many people don't do that. So, in the short time we've had, and the very few points I've been able to make, goodness knows there are many more, let's return to the question of the day: what makes a food destination successful? Clearly, the quality of the food offer has to be good. That may sound obvious too, but it's no good just wishing for a food destination just because somebody wants one. There has to be some interesting, good quality producers. Alongside good produce, the high standard conversion of that produce is vital, i.e. if you have great cheeses where you want your food destination to be, then you need to make sure your chefs and your local cooks know how to convert that cheese into something interesting. From that can be established all the peripheral things that are necessary. So variety is important. Accommodation offers, ways in which local produce is served, and related activities, things that appeal to young families and to the grey pound. Giving visitors the possibility to explore, whether independently or in a more organised fashion, to meet producers, to hear how the food stories fit in with the geography, the history, the local culture, all of those aspects, and to learn in a gentle, soft way and a fun way about the produce without being feel as if they're being primed for an exam. Ensuring that it's possible to buy a selection of produce easily, and I'm amazed sometimes at how difficult that can be, and either to ship it easily and economically. And importantly, giving visitors a reason to return, keep things fresh, dynamic, and happening, not just so people return, but so they have an incentive to recommend their friends and people they know to visit you as well. Looking at what other places are doing and learning from them, but avoiding the temptation to mimic them. Doing your own thing, what suits your unique assets, your unique position. And of course, knowing what your assets are and exploiting them. Be them charismatic producers, breathtaking scenery, or extraordinary world-renowned food events. And I'm aware of the fact I've probably just described Monmouthshire, but hey. And remaining open-minded about working with other people outside of your area to enhance and show off what you have. I received a tweet last night from Miller asking me what I thought the best food destination was, which I thought was a bit cheeky. But it does make me think that normally at this stage in proceedings, somebody says, so where is your favourite food destination? And it's a dreaded question for me because I'm not a favourite type of person. I don't have a favourite film, a favourite piece of music, a favourite book. It depends on the time of year and what mood I'm in. But we're in the third weekend in September, so it has to be Abergavenny. There's no other food destination at this time of year. Thank you very much.